All right, we're live. Let me double check Facebook and everything on my other screens. I hope everybody's having a great evening tonight. We've got a good group of people today. We've got some high schoolers and some professionals, parents, all kinds of stuff on our live tonight. And we are excited to get started.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Like I don't really know what the. Okay, so you can do this. So you can do like this, and then
I'm sorry, Facebook is not liking me. I don't know why that's happening. Okay. Okay, so we are good to go from my perspective right now. Welcome to our Dawn Health Parent Conference. This month we're talking about some end of school year anxieties that students face as the year winds down from middle school to high school and beyond, and even before that. So I just wanted to give an overview of how Dawn Health supports these students. We are a mental health solution, preventative mental health solution for adolescents and their parents. So we really partner with the whole family in this mental health journey. And we really believe in the strength of resilience and growing these resiliency skills for teens and children and equipping their parents through this whole thing, because we really believe that mental health is something that requires the whole family to work through and grow through that. Now that y'all know a little bit about Dawn Health, I want to hand the floor over to everybody that's on our panel this week or this month. And we'll just go ahead and start with Lauren, and we'll kind of move down, and everybody will introduce themselves and see how we're going.
Hi, everyone. Glad you guys can all make it. I'm Lauren. I'm a pediatrician and also a parenting coach. And I am the mother of the two other ones in this call, Jack and Luke. I'm also the mom of Sean, who is almost 14, and Kate, who is 10. And I'm excited to be here. My goal is really to stress the importance of, like Gabby was saying about the importance of whole family involvement, and also equipping both parents and kids with the tools to manage, stressors, anxiety, things that come up, communication, and things like that. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. My name is Jim Simney. I'm a clinical social worker, and most importantly, I'm a father. I have a 21-year-old son, an 18-year-old son, and a 17-year-old daughter. And I'm proud to be here and excited to be here and support the mission of Dawn Health, which, like Dr. Lauren mentioned, it's preventative, it's family-centric, and it really builds capacity, not to only solve a problem today, but to build skills for a lifetime. And that proactiveness is really in step with what I believe clinically, socially, and emotionally. So thanks for taking time to be here with us tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim.
Hi.
Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, I'm Jack Fulkerson. I'm a junior at Torrey Pines High School in San Diego, and I'm happy to be here.
Luke.
Hi, I'm Luke. I'm also a junior at Torrey Pines High School, and it's great to be here.
Awesome. Great. So like I said earlier, we're talking about end of year anxiety and kind of the things that students are facing these days with AP exams, dual credit, friends, trying to balance everything. So as we start from your professional and personal kind of parental perspective, so for Lauren and Jim, how can students identify the difference between normal kind of end of year stress and actual anxiety? And then what are some steps that they can take to manage it?
Dr. Lauren, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, I think I like that question. I think it's important to understand that stress and anxiety are normal parts of life. We're going to encounter things that stress us and, that kind of really challenge us. And that's just part of managing life. I think, the important thing is when anxiety is a normal response to something that's scary, unknown, overwhelming. It's a feeling that, I'm sure we've all experienced in our bodies, where we have, kind of just sometimes it really interferes with our life in a sense, right? So I think it's important to understand that when you have these feelings that overwhelm you, with what's going on in your life, is to just recognize it, to bring awareness into how you're feeling it in your body, and what is going on. And really, I think some of the important things to do is to first recognize it and learn how to take steps in order to manage it, manage the stress and the anxiety that can come along with it. So, there's a lot of strategies that we can talk about, and I'll let Jim and Jack and Luke talk about it as well. But there's basically a lot of, healthy habits for us is really important. So, developing tools on how to manage their stress and overwhelm is really important. So, developing tools on how to understand what's going on, how you can address things, kind of breaking things down, to-do lists, just basic. Other things that are really important that we often neglect, especially when we're really stressed out and we have a lot going on, is sleep, exercise, moving your body, getting outside, eating well, and also connection, and talking to your parents, talking to friends, hey, this is really stressing me out. I'm really worried. Asking for support. Hey, is there any way that I can get some help with this? Or can I just unload? Sometimes it's just a matter of talking about it, talking through it, and unloading it, with somebody else by your side, not with the intention of that person fixing it or solving that problems for you, but just to really have a safe space to talk about what's going on for you, and really to help and oftentimes that just is enough to come up with some solutions or to calm your nervous system down. There's other strategies, obviously, that people talk about, like meditation and breathing. And so there's a lot of things out there that can really help with the stress and the overwhelm. But really, I think getting support, talking about it, and for parents, learning how to be that safe space for your child, not to jump in and try to fix it, just to allow them to have that stress and overwhelm, and accept it, and let them have their emotions and really talk it through. And those are just some things off the top of my head, but I'll let Jim continue on.
Sure. No, great ideas. I like that. I think as the end of the school year wraps up, to add value to what you mentioned, there's a huge impact with the relationship that the student has with the faculty members or their social connections. And for some students, sadly enough, it might even be the safest, most functioning place that they spend 6-8 hours a day at. So there is a normal grieving and a detachment process that adolescents and teens go through. Plus it's really taking away from the function of a schedule. Dr. Lauren, you mentioned exercise and sleep, nutrition, and also the value of having a set schedule, not to be rigid, but to be functional. And when we take that away for, say, 60, 90 days, it really, impacts the quality of how that child or adolescent is thinking and how they produce. The other thing too is, when we look at that whole recipe for success, when we look at sleep, I sort of, with the clients I work with that are teenagers, I really try to impress upon them that the quality of their day today is dependent upon their bedtime routine and their sleep hygiene the night before. That it's undeniably connected. So if we're taking care of ourselves last night, we have more of a chance to have a more optimal more contentment and functional day today. And at a very basic level, you already mention this before I pass it off to the other guys, really teaching families, our charge at Dawn Health is to support the whole family unit, not to come in and fix one person and leave. We're here to build capacity and help them rise to a higher level, and helping them understand what's expected versus unexpected. And like you said earlier, Dr. Lauren, high school, teen years, adolescent, it's supposed to be stressful. And let's call that out if it's normal. Let's celebrate that's a developmental marker that we can wrap with tools and support, but let's normalize it. And then if it moves out of that, like you said earlier, into anxiety, that's where it's really impeding the quality of life, and it's deteriorating their functioning. Maybe it's eroding their sleep, their nutrition, their exercise, their mobility, their social patterns. So when it becomes more of a hindrance to day-to-day functioning with that recipe, that's when we look at it from an anxiety standpoint. So that's my take on it. But I'm really interested to hear what Jack and Luke, what do you feel are some of the key things that your age group, deal with as far as, stress or anxiety on a daily basis for an average high school student these days?
So I really feel like that, well, how I deal with stress by kind of just maintaining a normal routine and keeping the routine that I've had throughout the year, because that kind of, it just feels like my normal, like how it normally is. And that means like just getting good sleep, like keep getting good sleep and not pulling like all-nighters or getting only a few hours of sleep to cram for an exam, because that often leaves me like way more tired and like less able to perform well on the exam the next day. And I feel like most people, or most of the people I know, kind of do a similar thing, where they try and keep the same routine to help deal with stress, because it's just doing anything unusual makes the stress kind of amplified, and kind of, and it leads to like a domino effect, where if you're not getting good sleep one day because you're cramming for an exam, then you feel way more tired and you might sleep a lot the next day, but then you have to study for another exam and it keeps getting worse and worse and you keep getting out of your routine, and that just makes your physical health and your mental health both like worse and worse.
Yeah, I love what you said, Jack. And before we pass it to Luke, can I ask you a clarifying question, Jack? So, can you think of a time where, looking back on it, maybe you didn't have that insight or that self-reflection to say, I'm not keeping my routine or my schedule, and I need to realign myself, or maybe reboot, sort of like we reboot a computer. Did you feel like you had the awareness to recognize that, or did you need one of your parents to come in and help create awareness? And it's not a right or wrong answer. I'm just curious. Like, I have two teens myself and a 21-year-old, and I can get two different answers on any given day, but it's more important that I'm there for them. But I'm just curious, did you have that self-awareness to readjust, or did you need mom or dad to come in and help you with that?
Well, both my parents have been really good, especially my mom. She's been really helpful in helping me recognize stress and how to deal with it. And I feel like just her encouraging that throughout like my high school career has just really helped me like maintain a relatively low stress environment compared to my other peers. And so I've kind of always been aware that keeping a good routine and getting enough sleep is helpful for dealing with stress, because my parents have placed such a priority on that, and that's been like their number one priority over grades or over school, over how well we've done. It's like our physical and mental health over school.
Gotcha. Thank you for teaching me that. I appreciate that. Luke, what's your take on that? What are some tools that you've tried that maybe didn't work, or maybe were, really incredibly awesome to help you manage stress effectively?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest part is having a good support system, whether through its friends, parents, teachers, just having people who you can talk to and trust with problems you have. If you just need a vent, if you need to just let everything out because you've been stressed with projects and everything like that. And for me especially, I like, if I have like big tasks and a lot of teachers are assigning projects or extra credit assignments that often have big separate parts to them, I like to just break it down, think about different individual things that I have to do, and then it alleviates the stress because it allows me to focus on the certain, I think of it, the project as a whole, but then I also have these separate assignments that I'm more focused on, and that feel more like that I can complete more easily than if I just think about having to complete the entire project.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks for teaching me about that. I appreciate that. I think Gabby's probably going to tap into some more of both of your knowledge as well with some follow-up questions. But thanks for letting me sort of take the mic there for a minute, Gabby. I appreciate you.
No, absolutely. Go right ahead. That's why we have this whole panel, it's a good discussion. I just wanted to remind anybody watching live, we will have a Q&A session at the end. So wherever you're watching, whether it's on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're watching, go ahead and drop some questions in the comment section. We've got people kind of monitoring those, and they'll send them to me as they come, and I'll be keeping tabs of them for the end of the session. So Jack and Luke, obviously you're kids, so you have parents, and Jack, you specifically talked about kind of that parental support through times of high stress in school and whatnot. How can parents kind of maintain that balance between being realistic, but also empathetic towards their approach, specifically like in light of maybe you didn't perform as well on an exam that you thought you were going to do great? Or I know, Luke, we talked about you not making the golf team at one point. Things were like failure happens. How have your parents kind of balanced that?
So I believe that like one of the most important things is just like being supportive, no matter kind of what happens. A lot of the stress that occurs in high school is partly because of the parents and how they pressure their children into doing well. And it's like you don't want your parents to be, completely like not in control, and you don't want to not do well. Your parents need to be supportive enough to where they encourage you to do well, but are not putting so much pressure on you where it's causing you stress and like having a negative impact on your mental health.
Yeah, I think you really touch upon something deeply important. And, here at Dawn Health, that's why we hold very firmly to the construct of having the whole family be part of the journey. Because as high quality clinicians and health and wellness coaches, we're here to help parents understand what are they projecting, the best of intention, but maybe the not the most optimal application, or what are they transferring that maybe is part of their history that maybe they're not aware of, or maybe they are, but to help model and reshape maybe how they come into those situations. So like you were saying, Jack, they can be supportive and stand with you, but not add more stress to the situation, and create parental guardian awareness while helping that teen and adolescent. And here at Dawn Health, we take great pride in holding both of those variables firmly and confidently, so that when they re-intersect, that we've got a higher functioning family. And now we have those tools, not only, like I said, for today, but forever. And that's the value that we had. So how about you? How about you, Luke? What are you thinking as far as, your brother's response? Do you think he's spot on? Do you think you have a different flavor to add? What's your vibe on that, Luke?
No, I agree with him. It's like I like having parents to guide me and help me along with what I do and help me influence the decisions I make. But ultimately, those decisions are up to me, and my parents are here to guide me, especially through my teen years. And I like in my mom and dad, they're both super empathetic and super kind, super supportive, but then it's having that balance between being really empathetic and caring for those people, caring for your kids and supporting your interests, but also having like someone who's a very realist and like is like, yes, this stuff happens and it's gonna suck, but sometimes you have to make those decisions in order to benefit you, benefit yourself ultimately, or even help the people around you, which will bring you up.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just gonna pop in. Yeah, because I have the experience of twins, and so two very different humans at the same point, right? And so it's going back to what Jim said on how to support the whole family, and really teaching, we're thrown in as parents, right, without any skills and any tools. And, just kind of this expectation that as parents, we should know exactly how to do all of this, which we don't. And we wouldn't expect a pilot to go fly a plane without training. We wouldn't expect a surgeon to go into the operating room without years of training. And so I think there's this, we miss out on so much of this opportunity as parents to really dig deep into kind of addressing things, for us, like Jim said, about our self-awareness and what are we projecting onto our kids, what is coming from our experience. And it takes work. It takes work and skill building for all of us. And for parents to really take ownership of that, so then we can teach these skills to our children and support them through what they're going through. And so that's a lot of the work I do as a parenting coach, is really working through, how do we learn how to communicate with our kids? How do we learn how to recognize that they're their own people on their own journeys? They have their own experiences. They have the way their brain works is different than the way our brain works, right? And so how do we be present? How do we depersonalize, which is really hard as a parent? And that's one of the things I've had to learn over time is their frustration and what they do has nothing to do with me in a sense, right? Like when they come to you with something that's hard and painful and difficult, as a parent, it's a natural reaction to want to fix it and to want to make it better. And you don't want to see your child in pain. And we can't really take that away, and we can't really fix things per se. And so I think a really good thing is learning how to sit with your kid through the difficulty, through the stress, through the time that they're drowning, and really be there as a lifeboat, as like putting, the life jacket onto your kid. But we can only do that as parents if we're not drowning at the same time. And I think we've all been in that experience where your child is struggling or having a moment in any part of their life. And then you kind of, instead of saving them, you kind of start drowning with them, right? You get triggered, you get scared, you have all the things come up for you as far as like, how can I make this better? I don't want my child to be in pain. And then you have two people that are drowning and you can't really provide the support you need. So, we talk a lot about like how to get grounded, how to put on the life jacket to your kid and support them through whatever stress they're going to. And then after you kind of get past that, emotion, the stress, whatever the child is going through, that is then when you can, it may be the next day, it may be a week later, you can come back to that. And that's when, as a parent, you can guide them. You can talk to them about solutions. You can talk to them about, how can we manage this better? How can, especially as teenagers, like that was really hard. Like you're really stressed out. Like there's a lot going on. What are some things that you think would be helpful for you? Right. So, that's part of, what we want to do at Dawn Health too, is to support, learning how to manage these situations in a more, positive way, in a more helpful way for our kids, and not, like Jack said, like not adding to their stress. I mean, I know I've done it, right? We're all human. So sometimes I dive in with them and suddenly I'm drowning as well. So it's learning how to kind of get out of that and not projecting what you want for them on them. And kids feel that. People feel that when, it's not, you're not looking out for supporting them as their own journey. So anyways, I think that's an important thing to think about, and also just acknowledge as a parent, hey, like there are still skills that I can learn and tools I can do to be more supportive, to come at this from a different angle, to provide better support for my kids. And that's so just crucial to me, is to create that safe space that your kids can fall apart. They can, have their emotions there, and they know that you will hold that space for them.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Lauren, for your insight. Kind of going off of what you were talking about with parents kind of being there with their kids through times like this. how can parents create a safe space in those moments and even before those moments happen so their kids feel comfortable coming to them in these hard, stressful, just anxiety ridden times? And then kind of what strategies can they use outside of what you had previously mentioned, I guess, Jim and Lauren? What strategies can these parents use when their kids come to them in these hard times?
Sure. I'll jump in here. I think first and foremost, acknowledging that stress and, anxiety are part of the road of life, the roller coaster. And our kids are watching, they're watching. How does, mom, dad, guardian, whoever their care team is at home, they're watching, how do they do this? And then they're putting that deposit in their memory bank, and they're going to be more likely to replicate that at a later date when they too feel like they have a similar situation to what that adult had experienced and modeled. So I think it's so important that we here at Dawn Health, we really work closely with the parents and guardians to help them understand and to learn from them. How do you manage stress? How do you navigate those moments? What is your toolbox right now? What does it look like? And how can we enhance that, or what can we do differently to make some adjustments? Because that's where it starts. And then we can sit down, like Lauren said too earlier, creating those safe spaces, those pockets where we can model. A lot of my families, we do Wednesday and we do Sunday night check-ins. And that's sort of the old school family meeting, if you will. And I remember those when I was young too. And we don't family meet because there's a problem. Because if we're only doing that when something's wrong, we're probably missing a really prime opportunity to teach and support each other. So at Dawn Health, we're always about being resilient, being adaptive, being proactive. So what can we do on Wednesday? Because guess what? If there's nothing monumentally wrong, or there's not stress or major anxiety, well, then let's celebrate that. Because if we're only huddling to call out a deficit, if we're only huddling to solve a problem, we're probably missing the landscape of a lot of other great attributes that our family has. And then we become so focused on that we miss the rest of the canvas. So, I think, strategy number one is we have those frequent check-ins, Wednesday, Sunday nights, a midpoint during the week. And then sort of let's take a look at what last week was. Let's carry forward what worked for us and move that forward into next week, or let's shed what didn't work and let's make some adjustments. So those are huge pieces, I think.
Absolutely. Lauren, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, that's great, Jim. Thanks for that. I love those check-ins. Maybe we'll start doing that, Jack. No, I think honestly, what we do a lot in the conscious parenting work I do is we actually don't do punishments and we don't do rewards. And the reason for that is actually that fear of by punishing children, right, for doing something that you decide is wrong or not okay, it actually creates this fear of and manipulation of their behavior to what you want them to be, right? And so my kids have grown up in this system without punishments, without rewards even, and I truly believe in that kind of structure. And the reason for that is because you have this safe space, right? It doesn't mean that you're okay with behaviors that they do. So I want to be really clear about that. A lot of people kind of panic when they hear no punishments, no rewards. There's not, these natural consequences, and there's not a dismissive parenting, and it's not being okay with certain behaviors, but it does create this, this environment of safety that, I know there's systems out there, and there's family systems, if you're not getting certain grades, there's punishments, but it also there's systems that you get rewarded for certain grades. And that's just a reverse form of punishment in a sense, in the sense that like, well, gosh, if I got a B, then I don't get the $100. I've heard this happen in different family systems. And I think this creates this fear and this unsafe space for kids to come to parents with, that, that they feel safe, that they can talk about things that are going on, or if they're not doing well in school, and like, how do we address that? And if you're struggling in certain subjects, like, what can we do to support you, versus, you don't get the $100 or you get punished or whatever the thing is. Obviously it's complicated and there's a lot of, kind of strategies to work around those things. But, for me, I feel like that creates such a safe space. I mean, Jack and Luke, I'd really love to hear what things have helped you guys, from a, parent support. Like, what have your dad and I done that have been supportive? What are some things that maybe we have not gotten so right that we can still improve on, which I'm sure there are. But in general, like, what are, because you guys are very different and you do, you have different interests, you operate, the way you guys study and how you do in school is very different. So I'd love to hear from you guys what helps you, as far as, what we do that helps you the best.
Yeah, I mean, for me at
Yeah, I mean,
least, I
for
really
me,
like the no punishment, no reward, because as you're saying with the punishment and reward, if you give me a reward for getting a certain grade and I don't get that grade, I'll start to beat up on myself more and more on like why didn't I get that grade? And it doesn't give me an opportunity to talk to my parents about, hey, what, like how can you guys help me with this, whether it's getting a tutor, extra study, like having extra time on tests, working with your parents to have them help you study or talk to teachers. And I think natural consequences is probably a lot better than telling people they're grounded for certain behaviors. And obviously there's certain behaviors that are just outright wrong that you shouldn't do, like hitting your siblings or like throwing plates. But uh but the natural consequence is, like, if you don't study for a test, you're not going to get a good grade. Or if you don't do these certain things, then you won't get into a good college, or you won't make friends. You won't do all these things that have more of an influence on you than grounding. Because I feel like grounding, especially grounding your kids between like all the ages, makes them dislike you more, because some of them, especially in your teenage years, are going out to parties, having fun, spending time with friends, and then you'll limit that, and then that makes the teenagers more resentment to you, and you've the kids will feel like they can't trust the parents, because if they do something wrong, if they feel like they're going to do something wrong, they're not going to tell the parents about it, or tell them what they're going to do.
Great points. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that and add that, like, with the natural consequences, and we've come across this too with, is I think the parents have to let go of these, yeah, if you, this is your path, right? This is this is you learning how to navigate life. And if you don't study for a test and you don't do well, it's like, okay, are you okay and willing to accept this lower grade? And generally not. I mean, the kids, in my experience, and it's like, oh, I messed that up. What can I do? And these are the consequences. I mean, we just had this experience. What are the consequences? And like, oh, I am going to have to do extra work and extra credit to get my grade back up. Yeah, that's life. This is what happens. And this is actually equipping your kids to learn what happens when when it doesn't happen. Now, am I okay with what happened? No, of course not. But it's like, okay, now how do we address this mistake, and how do we kind of do the best we can out of this mistake? And and this is your, like, just kind of letting go of all these expectations on getting into like a top school. And that's not everyone's path, nor is it always it's not necessarily the right path. And so, or getting straight A's, and that's just not. Let's just be realistic about where our kids are at, how they learn, and all those things. And just going back to, like, no, am I okay that they're going to stay up all night? Am I okay that they're on their phones all the time? No. I mean, these are things that you definitely, as parents, need to address, and kind of, we are still guiding them through this. However, if you have a child that is resentful and rebellious and, and not, then you have no buy-in into influencing them and guiding them through these things. So going back to just creating this trusting relationship, are our kids going to do everything, we approve of? Absolutely not. Right. Or are they going to do everything that we're okay with? No. but we will have no influence as parents, or we won't be able to guide them and support them if they don't trust us, if they're resentful, if they're rebellious, right? And so it goes back to creating that safe environment. But anyways, I'll let you, Jack, let us know what supports you.
So I really appreciate the no punishment, no reward, because they don't have to motivate me with reward to get good grades or to do something well. It's all from within, and I want to motivate myself to make good grades. I feel like I should make good grades because it's something I want, and I value that having good grades is something that is attainable and achievable for me. And I don't have to punish myself and put myself through an insane amount of stress to get good grades because my parents want me to get good grades. So I feel just the no reward or no punishment just really helps my motivation for school and everything. It just it helps me motivate from within rather than have my parents need to motivate me to do well. And
oh, sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Well, one thing that I feel like they could improve on a little bit, or one thing that could support me a little bit more, is actually them distancing themselves a bit more from me, because I'm a fairly independent person, and I like to I manage my time. I feel like I manage my time really well. I manage my work really well, and I do that all kind of by myself. I'm extremely introverted, and so I feel like when they try and step in and try and help me with some stuff that I know I can achieve, it kind of puts pressure. I have pressure from myself to do well, but then I also have pressure from them to for them to help me to do well. So it's they just want to help, but I feel like I can handle the situation myself because I've developed a system that allows me to handle a bad grade or a bad test grade. And when they try and overstep and try and kind of control even just a little bit, I'm feeling the pressure from them, and that kind of negatively affects me.
Jack, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think what you really tap into is sort of what we really impress upon our families and our teens and adolescents, is building that resiliency, that adaptability, that accountability, all those things. Never with the prize ever being perfection. We're all going to stumble. And the other thing too is, you've mentioned a little bit about what you both do, in your free time and other avenues. Keep in mind that we've been focusing the last 5 minutes on school. It's important, don't get me wrong, and that is the topic for this month. But if we think of our sense of ourself as a whole pie chart, school is just one piece of that pie in which we identify who we are, what our roles are, our capacities, our limitations. Your sibling, your son, your friend, whatever it is. We all have different roles, and I think we have to keep that in perspective. That sometimes when we feel a certain piece of that pie is pressing into us at an abnormal rate or level, and it's causing stress or anxiety, we have to really step back and assess what value are we giving that. Are we overvaluing that in the standpoint of we want to respect it, but we also maybe need to step away from it for our own health, our own balance, our own sleep, nutrition, schedule, all of those things. So I appreciate both of you calling that out. And self-advocacy, what you just did here on the live stream with your wonderful mom, was you gave some really awesome feedback that was really kind. It was appropriate. It was well placed. It was genuine, loving, caring. I mean, that's a sign of what we're trying to build at Dawn Health, is that parents are just doing what they do because they love their kids. And if it's not meshing well with what your function is, and you can support that, then what you did is perfect. That's communication, adaptation, and resiliency. So I applaud that.
Yeah, do you mind if I add on to a few of those points?
Yeah, go ahead, Luke, please.
So adding on to my mom's point earlier about the parents and having a aspect of their life that you can help them with. Also for me, as I have epilepsy, and it's something I've had for a few years, and I think you don't want to yes, there are times where you need to support your kids and keep them safe and all that, but also you don't want to bubble wrap them their entire teenage years, because if you do it all throughout high school and they don't have chance to go explore with friends, go to party, have fun like that, and be exposed to risk, then when they get into college, they're not going to be able to know what different risks are and how to handle those risks, because you won't know how to react if somebody asks to drink with them, smoke, do drugs, all that. And I think, especially in your teenage years, allowing your sense of risk to develop with your parents nearby, and you can call them for help. You can call them for support. Like my mom and dad have always said, it's like, if you're ever in a situation where you feel unsafe, call us and then they'll come pick you up. And I think that's good a good rule to have with your parents, where you can't do that as much in college, because you could be half like on the other you could be on the East Coast when we're currently at the West Coast, or you could be a plane flight away, or more than like a 2-hour car drive away. So yes, there are times where you have to bubble wrap your kid, but also you want to give them the freedom to explore risks.
Great points. Thank you for sharing that, Luke. I appreciate you too.
Yeah, and just to kind of, I appreciate that, and like Jim's points as well, like creating the system that, I know that both my kids will speak up to me and tell me what they need and what's going on for them, even if they know that it could upset me, it could disappoint me, those things. Like to me that it's, just that's actually very comforting for me, because then I know that they can speak their truth, they can speak what they need, even if but they can do it in a kind, like Jim said, in a kind and considerate and compassionate way. It's just such an amazing skill to have, that they know that they can speak up for their needs and their wants and how something is affecting them. And so I just really appreciate that. And that takes it takes work, and it takes time to develop this kind of relationship. And for them, that they know that their responsibility is not to manage my feelings around for certain things. And that's actually something that it's taken me into my, adulthood, that I'm still learning, right? Because these were skills that were not taught to me. So the fact that they are not responsible for me, I'm responsible for my reaction and my feelings and my emotions around what they say, is really important. And also to teach them how to do it in a considerate and kind way. And to Jack's point of the internal motivation, that's part of the punishment, no punishment, no reward system, is this creates this internal locus of control that I'm glad that Jack's brought up, because we want actually our kids to work from this internal focus, right? That the external factors are not gonna, of course they affect you and things are gonna, but ultimately at the end of the day, what is happening out there is not as important as what is happening inside. And we want our kids to be internally motivated. We don't want them to be, motivated from external forces. And so I think that's, I appreciate that Jack brought that up, because of course, like he has proven that he can do the work, and he's internally motivated and he's driven and all those things. And so, yeah, I don't actually need to step in and intervene in certain ways. And also that gives me the comfort of knowing that he's going to be off to college in a year, and that he's going to be driven by this internal motivation, which is what we want. And then as far as, what Luke brought up, as much as I do want to bubble wrap my kids, yes, it's a very good point. And we've talked about this before too, is this is the time when they're still under your roof and they're still under that more of a guidance. Not that you will not guide them as they go off to college, and Jim can probably speak to that too, as mine are not there yet. But this is where you have that still influence, and you can create that safety net as they start exploring. And that's a very, individuation is such an important developmental stage. This is very normal developmentally for kids to start individuating, and separating. And this is how we create adults in this world who can go out and take care of themselves and be resilient and, and fail and learn how to get up on their own and also ask for help. And this is the world that I want to create and the adults that I want to put out into this world. So I appreciate you guys sharing that.
Well, I couldn't think of like a better way to wrap up the main portion of our conference. I do want to be cognizant of time. We are at that 45-minute mark. So if y'all are cool with it, I'll move into some of these questions because we've had 3 questions come through. It looks like 2 from YouTube and one from Facebook. We did kind of touch on this earlier. I know Jack mentioned like pulling an all-nighter and sleep and how that really impacts like his stress levels and how he sees it impact his friends. I'll go ahead and pull this question up so everybody can see it. Looks like KE is just wanting us to speak on the relationship between sleep, exercise, nutrition, and mental health. So I guess from Jim and Lauren, from y'all's perspective, and then Jack and Luke, I get from the students' perspective, just kind of quickly give us your thoughts on this question.
Sure, I'll jump in. I really advocate to build a schedule with every one of my clients to really build in those repeatable, easy wins, such as sleep-wake schedule. What's target bedtime? What's target wake-up time? What protected time are you giving for exercise, mealtime, or other obligations, homework? And if we can start plugging those things in, what we typically find is we have far more time available in our day than what our brain has tricked us into believing that we really have. Because often is the case, I hear, and I probably was that person too, I don't have time. But when we start structuring our time and using it efficiently, that lowers our stress because we're now eliminating variables and we're just simply rinse and repeat day after day. So if you work out, you might like to go to work out every day at 4:30 p.m. after school. Maybe you eat dinner every night at 6 p.m. Might sound boring to some, but it sounds really incredible to me because why create new chaos every day? Let's just create things and keep them simple so that you can just rinse and repeat day in and day out. So I go back to building a schedule with all my clients because inherently what happens is a trickle-down effect, positive effect with better sleep, better bedtime routines, better commitment to exercise. And then when we feel better and we think better and more clearly, we're going to probably have better nutrition as well.
Yeah. And this has definitely been a passion of mine for the last few years. And I'll throw in that for anyone who's interested, I volunteered for about a year with Dr. Chris Palmer, who's a psychiatrist out of Harvard. If anyone wants to read the book Brain Energy, it actually is a really good book to answer your question on metabolic health, and that mental health is metabolic health. And if down to the scientific level, that there's more and more research and evidence, and it makes sense coming out that our metabolic health really drives our mental health. And so we talk a lot about cardiovascular health and gut health, but we don't really talk about brain health. And that's really so important. And all of the things that you mentioned in your question, sleep, exercise, and what we eat are very linked to depression, anxiety, and even some of the more serious mental illnesses like bipolar and schizophrenia. That these things actually really affect it all the way down to like the mitochondrial level, if you want to get more scientific. So, kind of to go on a little bit more deeper about that, but it's so important. And like Jack touched on this, pulling all-nighters will probably not get you a better grade because your brain is really not going to be functioning as well as it should be. And really having the good sleep, the movement, the exercise, we know that it's so good for you. And food, as we know that we're in a crisis of our, metabolic health. And that's really, there's probably no surprise that it's linked to mental health because we're struggling with our mental health as well. So nutrition, getting back to really whole foods, getting away from processed foods, getting away from like added refined sugars. These are small changes, and Luke actually can maybe speak to this too, because he actually did the ketogenic diet for a few months and noticed, he can speak to it a little bit, noticed, his brain fog clearing a bit, and that he was thinking more clearly, that he was having, I don't know, Luke, do you want to speak to that for like a couple minutes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I did a not super strict ketogenic diet, but a rough following of that diet where it's just meat, vegetables, some fruit, but close to zero carbs. I'd have a corn tortilla now and then, just to settle my cravings. But it was I went cold turkey for the first few months and started to reintroduce carbs back into my diet, and it helped me. One, it cleared up my brain a little bit, and two, I was what I felt, for me at least, was a bit overweight or not at the weight that I would like to be. So it helped me cut back on some of that weight. Now, I'm not recommending you do it for that purpose and strictly to lose weight, but there's a time and place for when you want to do that, and it improved my mental health a little bit, of the stress, the anxiety. It cleared it up a little bit. It made it help, and it helped me to focus more.
Cool.
Thanks.
I'd also like to say is that a lot of people I know in school do see sleep, exercise, and nutrition as negligible, and that it's a lower priority than schoolwork, and that a lot of people I know, they feel that studying and doing homework last minute, like, that's okay, and they can do that, and they can neglect their sleep and their nutrition and not exercise. And I've seen that like affect a lot of people, and how they're just drowsy and their brain is not clear and they don't perform well on tests. And it's just not, like, it's non-negotiable when you're talking about
Yeah,
your
I think
mental
for
health.
me, like for the past few weeks, like, yeah, sleep and exercise for me at least are the two, or sorry, sleep and nutrition are the two most important things for me, because for the past few weeks I usually go rock climbing as my form of exercise, and I haven't been doing that as much because I've had to focus on schoolwork and focus on other things that are important to me. But luckily at my school they have weight training, and it gives me like an hour every three days, or other weeks it's 2 days, to exercise and have my body not focus on something other than schoolwork, and it makes me feel less tired. It makes me have fun with my friends in that class, be social, and it lets me just have more fun instead of strictly focusing on schoolwork, because I still know that I'm getting my exercise in, and it's helping my schoolwork.
That's awesome. Thanks
Absolutely.
for sharing that. And Gabby, I'm looking at our questions coming in. I would like to propose we move to the one that offers we live in a time-bound society, because I think that
Absolutely.
plays into what the guys were just talking about. And I'll speak to this. I practice in a large suburban high school with 2,500 students, and I have a senior and a junior in high school, as well as meet with families on the Dawn Health platform. And what I really try to impress upon all of my clients is the fact that the time-bound elements of the systems we belong to, we might not be able to eliminate that, but we do have the ability to build capacity or contentment. And I know the tests are important to a certain extent, but I always use the mantra with my clients, with my teens, is let's start with the end in mind, meaning retirement. Let's start, from that point on. What do you anticipate is going to bring you joy and contentment? That balance to be able to weather the speed bumps of life and the joy that comes with it. Very few people that I've met in my 32 years of doing this have been able to walk it backwards with starting with the end in mind to a high school test, to say that was the impetus of my joy today. That's my anchor of truth, and I am that because I am this because of that. So we have to really mitigate that and really keep it in its lane, honor it, because it is part of what you have to go through. The obstacle's the way. But if we overinflate it and it becomes all of our self-worth, our identity, we're probably going to stumble anyways, because it's a shallow anchor. It doesn't have truth, resiliency, adaptability, and long-term value. And that's what contentment breeds, is that inner strength to say, I'm worthy, I'm content, I can, not perfectly, but I can do, because I have that strength or that wisdom, and that upbringing. So, I tend to look at it from that way, start with the end in mind. And as I said, humorously and seriously, no one's been able to walk it back to the age of 17 and tell me they are incredibly awesome or they have failed because of a single element of a time test in high school. And if they did and they believe that, then I have to do better work as a therapist, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I love that, Jim. I do think that a lot of our, and maybe this is what the question's getting at too, in a sense, is a lot of the system is not ideal, especially for kids that learn in different ways, especially with some of these tests. So, I love the perspective taking on, yeah, these are the tests we have to take, and I'm really not going to take much from it. I know there's standardized tests that schools have to do and things like that. The other thing too, I would add, is to really advocate for your child as well. Not all kids fit into the box that our school system is set up for, and most kids probably don't. And so we have to really advocate for our kids who don't fit into that, box of they can take the tests and they, their brain works in the way that the school system is set up, unfortunately. So really advocating for your child, if they're struggling in certain areas or with schoolwork, and also, yeah, like Jim said, not putting, so much emphasis on the tests, on the grades, on this, and seeing the bigger picture in life. And this also goes to, just kind of another point of, allowing your kids to fail and be okay with failure. And I'm not saying necessarily failing tests, but just struggling in different things, and things are not going to work out exactly how they planned, and that it might open doors for different things and different passions or different avenues. And just, so I love Jim saying that, and kind of seeing the big picture of where we're going from here, right? Not that it's all dependent on, this time and this moment and this test or this acceptance into a school, or, this one thing. So I appreciate that a lot. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and Jack, Luke, y'all are kind of in the throes of these tests, and I know y'all were just saying that you've got somebody has an AP test tomorrow. So with that kind of looming in mind, and it may not be as time bound as maybe some other tests in your life, but I mean, you have a day, or really part of a day, to get the test done, the writing portion done, all of that. So how do you feel that these time-driven tests kind of, does that heighten your anxiety going into it, or are you confident and kind of cool, calm, and collected going into it? How does it impact you?
Yeah, so for me, actually when I was sophomore year, my AP Euro teacher, who is one of my favorite history teachers, she was awesome. She noticed I was struggling on some of the tests, and she wanted to advocate for me to get extra time on those tests, because she saw that I was either struggling to answer questions or making dumb mistakes, where if I had more time on those questions, I would have I would have like understood it more and been able to answer it correctly and get higher scores on those tests. And that's what I think a lot of teachers need to do, is recognize where certain students are struggling and try and support them in those ways. And now I have 50% extra time on like all the college board tests, which are SATs and APs, which gives me a better chance and lessens the stress and anxiety that comes with having, like, some of the AP tests. You only have a minute to each question, which is not a lot, because especially for AP history exams, there's usually big paragraphs or prompts that take a few times reading, especially for me, to fully understand what they're asking, and that extra time allows my brain to process the information better, so it gives me a better chance of scoring well. And I think that's been a big part of my high school and how it's helped me throughout.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, for me, I've been lucky enough that I work really fast, and and for tests, time isn't really a big factor for me because I can work well under pressure, and I can work well, and I can work pretty fast doing standardized tests. But when doing time tests and you can see the timer clicking away, like on the SAT or AP exams, it's like you feel it's just the pressure for me mainly that like I have a certain amount of time to do this. And if I don't make it in that time, then I'm losing out on like a better grade. And so for me, it just adds a lot of pressure. And time tests they do make you dumber because of that increased pressure. You do feel that like
Mhm.
your brain doesn't work as well when you're being pressured into doing something. And when you maybe look back over a test, you see the dumb little mistakes that you've done because you've taken the time to go through that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the feedback on that. We've got one more question that came through on Facebook. I think it'll be great to hear this from the students on the call. How much of the stress and anxiety is parent driven? I mean, coming from somebody who played select sports and did pretty decent in school, like I did good enough. I mean, my parents never were super, you have to get all A's and you have to be on varsity, you have to do all this. But I mean, I kind of had that intrinsic motivation to do the work. Although at some points in high school, I'm like, an 85 is good enough. So I didn't have a whole lot of that parental stress, but I had friends that did. And they would have meltdowns. They would, oh my word, they couldn't focus at soccer practice because they were worried about a test the next day. And I was like, dude, y'all gotta chill. So it's like, I know I experienced it from a friend perspective, and even my siblings had different parental stresses and whatnot. But I mean, I kind of grew up with parents that were kind of like, hey, you do what you need to do, but we do expect like excellence. We expect you to do well. So I did feel some level of stress. So how much of y'all's stress? I know it sounds like your parents, maybe a little bit of the exception to the rule here from how you've talked about your mom and dad on this call. How much of the stress and anxiety is parent driven from y'all or for y'all?
So for me, like I've been lucky enough to have, great parents, and they really try and focus on if it was good for us, like is that a score that we were happy with? And that kind of really takes a lot of the pressure and anxiety off, because that pushes us to do what we believe as well. Like get like an 85 might be good enough for us. And if that's good enough for us, then our parents believe that's good enough. And what I've noticed with a lot of my friends is that a lot of their parents want them to do well in school, not because they want to put stress on their child, but because they want to give them the opportunities of getting into a good college. And because they believe, and social media definitely has an aspect of it, but they believe that good colleges, getting into top 25 colleges, will make their lives easier. And I feel like a lot of parents just want to give their kids that opportunity of having that, of getting into a top college and being able to just open up so many more doors and for them in the future. And so they put a lot of pressure on their kids to do well because they want them to have an easier future than they might have because they had a bad experience at school. But there's also kind of their parents want them to do well because the parents can kind of brag about that their kids are making straight A's. And I feel like that's getting less and less prominent, and it's more that they want their kids to do well because they want their kids to have an easier future.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a certain part to what you mentioned before, Gabby, is that intrinsic motivation on doing well on tests. It's like in some of my classes, I'm happy with a 75, 80 because that's what I feel like is good for me personally. But then there's other class where if I don't get like a 80 on a test, then I'm really disappointed. And then in some classes like physics for me, that class is hard. Everybody doesn't do well, so I have that like community feeling of like yeah, I did bad, but then also everybody did bad. So there's a certain bit of community aspect in those classes that are super difficult, and that everybody shares that same feeling. So it takes the stress off of you, and it's like, okay, if I did better than the average, I'm happy. And especially with, I think my parents are luckily enough to not force a lot of stress on me through grades, through standardized test scores, but there is a certain amount of where where I'm unhappy with a certain grade and they reinforce that. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't, like, we know how good you are and you shouldn't be getting that grade, because we know you could work harder, do better, and get better scores in the classes. And going on to Jack's point about social media, is that there's definitely a added stress, because when you're scrolling through Instagram, I've seen this guy who reviews college applications, and it's like the most extraordinary stuff. It's like started 5 nonprofit, like it's a lot of those are really wild college applications, and then it's reviewing only those that get into like Ivy Leagues like Harvard, Yale, and I feel like that's put a certain stress on me, kind of like I don't like when I see that, it's like I know I'm not going to get into an Ivy League. Like I know I don't have the grades to get into an Ivy League, but then also it's kind of like, oh my God, these people are doing these things and they're getting into certain Ivy Leagues. It's like, I know, yes, I know it's completely unrealistic for me to do those things, but then it's also kind of like, I should be doing those things because that's what helps me get my grade up. And then I always like to step back and be like, yeah, these are kids who only do school and nothing else. Well, I like to have a life outside of school and grades and studying, and that's why I take slightly easier classes than my brother, because I like to have a life outside of school. I like to go exercise. I like to I like to go do things with my friends. I like to have the free time that maybe if I was taking 4 or 5 AP classes, it wouldn't have given me, and it would have given me all this extra stress to do better, where my grades probably would have been worse if I was taking more. So I know my own capabilities on what classes I can take, and if I'm really interested in a subject, I'll take that AP class because it forces me to learn more and will probably get me more interested in it.
Yeah, well, I think, as we get ready to wrap up, I want to sort of target you both. I appreciate, we all appreciate your perspective, but I think what you just articulated is really at the core of what Dawn Health does, is that we look at the individual family, we look at the individual members of the family, and there isn't a one size fits all. And even with you both are carving your own path in ways that are distinctly different, that are only, individual to you and what you need. And you're self-motivated, driven, you've got support. All of that is part of your pie chart. And that's important, that you individualize what your journey is. And that's exactly what we do at Dawn Health, and in helping not only the adolescent or the teen, but helping the parents see that vision too, so that they can support themselves as well as that adolescent teen child that they have. So thank you for sharing that, both of you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah, and I'd just like to pop in a couple of things. I know we're running low, or we're running over on time, but just a couple of points that have come up with what Jack and Luke are saying also is and something that I've learned is asking them how they feel about their grade. Like not an automatic congratulations if you get an A, or not an automatic like what the hell happened if you got a C, right? And that's something that I've learned to say, well, how do you feel about how you did? Like, regardless of whether it was an A or a C or a B or whatever, how do you feel? Because, what I've learned is it doesn't matter, it's not about how I feel. It's, like Luke said, it's like, oh my God, thank God I got a B, right? I thought I failed it. Yeah, I'm super happy with that. I worked my butt off. That was a really hard class. I'm so happy. Now, if I said, oh my God, how could you have gotten a B? Why didn't you get an A? Right? That's my judgment. That's my, expectations. And that's not helpful. And that's what creates that stress, right? So saying like, how do you feel about that B? It's like, oh, it may be, hey, I'm so glad that test was so hard. That class is so hard. Thank God I thought I was going to fail. I'm so happy with a B. Great. Congratulations. Right.
Mhm.
Whereas, it may be like, man, I really thought I was going to get an A. I worked really hard. Like, I'm really disappointed with that B, right? Oh, well, that's too bad. Like, what do you think we can do? Do you need extra support? No, I just need to study. Like, this is them self-driven behavior, self-started behavioral change for kids to be like, to see what they did, evaluate how they approached this test. What could I have done better? Do I need extra support, right? And so as a parent, just to kind of come in with that. And then I just, want to point out something, social media, which we really haven't addressed on this call, and that's okay. But I think we really have to, I think we're all aware of the effect of social media. The effect of like what you see on social media, like to Luke's point, is like, you don't know the whole picture of this person. You do not know what's going on. This is a social, and the destructive nature of social media, that can be a whole nother conference. But, I do want to put that in there now, that social media does affect our mental health significantly. We know this. It affects our mental health. It affects our performance. It affects our, a lot of the things like Luke said, like, oh, these people do all these things and they're getting into these great schools. We don't really know the whole story, right? This is not necessarily the truth. And also for parents and students to recognize going to an Ivy League or a top 25 school does not guarantee happiness, joy, contentment, success in your life. Actually, a lot of these high achievers probably have more struggles, mental health struggles, stress and things, and stuff like that. So that doesn't equal success. That doesn't equal joy. Like Jack was saying, parents want their kids to go to these top schools because they want an easier life. That is not necessarily what will happen or actually the truth. This is our perception of what we think, right? And so, looking at, and this is what we do, is we look at the person and what skills are they developing? Like Luke said, like what other interests do they have? And how is their life? That's a successful life, right? To kind of cultivate the joy and finding their passion. And, that doesn't equal like going to the top schools in the country, right? That doesn't make your life easier necessarily. That doesn't guarantee success, right? So I just really want to put that point as we close up to really look at social media and the effects on that. And also, perfect grades, perfect, the top schools does not equal, a successful life, a perfect life, or all those things. So just to kind of close it out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I know this was a very insightful conversation for me, as I hope it was for everybody that joined us. Thank you everybody for watching live. And if you missed us live, all these recordings will be on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, so you can watch them afterwards. Again, if you're ready to take that step and join Dawn Health, you can visit our website at dawnhealth.care. So it's not .com, it's .care. And then you can kind of learn a little bit more about us online and register and get your family in here and just really dig deep into what we talked about today. Jim, Lauren, y'all, or Jack, Luke, y'all have any little final words you'd like to send out?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended, but also Jack and Luke. You guys stepped into a space that may or may not be comfortable to you. It's not for me to judge, but you did it, and you did really, really well. Not so much by what you said, but just by showing up and competing and being adaptable and resilient and speaking your truth. So for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Nice work, and it was nice having you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. With that, I will go ahead and end our stream.